welcome back to Follow the Roads with me, Ramey Rhodes, and today I have the high school shop teacher and FFA advisor, Mr. Mitchell Jackson, who's also a brand new teacher here. And this is kind of an interesting interview because it's going to be kind of someone that I haven't been around and or had any classes with. A newer teacher I personally don't know, so I think this should be one of the more interesting ones. So could you please give us a 30-second introduction as to who you are?
Yeah, sure. So, like you said, my name is Mitchell Jackson, mostly because my mom wasn't mean enough to name me Michael Jackson. But yeah, I kind of grew up all over the Western U.S. Really didn't discover ag till I was in high school, but I joined FFA and ended up falling in love with it, and so I've kind of stuck with it ever since. I joined the Army right out of high school, and then after that, I went to college at the U of I. Spent quite a bit of time up there. I worked at the dairy there on campus. After that, I moved down to Mackey, where I was last year, and I was kind of teaching under Trent Van Leuven. He was last year's state teacher of the year, and the job just kind of happened to open up while I was looking for something, so it worked out really well. And then the position opened up here, so I wound up here.
Perfect. How was kind of that change coming to Challis? I don't think it'd be like that big of coming from Mackey to Challis, like you said, but what kind of surprised you or was kind of different about it, would you say?
I don't know. It's pretty similar in a lot of ways. I guess it's funny because I had been to Challis once previously when I was in high school, but I couldn't really tell you much about it when I was here from that time. But I did think there was going to be more trees like near into town. But I mean, it's sagebrush steppe, so that's always going to be everywhere.
Oh yeah. What music do you kind of listen to the most when you're going to work in the morning, or just in general?
I listen to a whole hodgepodge of stuff. I listen to everything from Hank Williams all the way up to I really like the 90s country. But I also listen to, like, if I'm going to work out, I'll listen to some like death metal type. It's kind of all over the place. I've been told I have a very eclectic playlist.
I've been told that too. Would it be different if you're kind of going on a long drive by yourself? Do you think you'd pick a different medium, or do you think you'd still stick to music or different medium like podcasts or like an audiobook?
Yeah, I definitely listen to audiobooks and podcasts when I'm driving long distances. Right before school started, I drove with my dad down to Arizona to visit his dad, and so it's nice to break up the monotony, especially if you can find something funny to keep you awake, because sometimes that the music kind of lulls you a little bit, and if you have something to laugh at, it's a little bit easier to stay awake, I think.
Of course. And what's kind of like your vision for the future of the shop program, or what are you kind of hoping to do?
I'd really like to, bring some rigor into the program. I want kids to feel like they're challenged. I would really like to see about getting like some certification stuff in order. I'd really like it if, coming out of here, kids had like a welding certification. Okay. I'm also really hoping to get our plant sale up and going so we have a bit more funds that we can play with. I've already tried to kind of clean out the greenhouse, and I've got some of the welding kids planning some tables so that we can really maximize our space in there and try and get some decent product coming out of there.
Being a first-time teacher, what are kind of some of like the major challenges that you're experiencing kind of right now?
Lesson planning for 6 different classes all on the same day is a doozy.
Yeah.
My first week was rough because I underestimated a little bit what I was going to need to do to fill that whole hour. And so there was a couple days where I was like scrambling for the last 10, 15 minutes trying to find productive stuff for students to do. Yeah. Because, when students aren't actively doing something, there's room for trouble there, especially in a shop.
Yeah. So you talked about like the certification classes, and you said welding ones. Are there any other kind of ones that you're looking at right now, or kind of hoping to go towards, or?
I'm kind of thinking I'll tackle it one thing at a time.
Okay.
I know that there are some like horticultural certifications that kids can get,
Mm-hmm.
but I haven't looked into those quite as much. And I think some of those are a little bit more complicated and might have a little bit more of a monetary input that's required. So like I said, if we can get the program, build up some funds, get stuff rolling, once we have that kind of built up, I think it'll be a bit easier to be able to do that for students.
You said you went to the military out of high school, right?
Yeah, I was 17.
What's kind of the thing that kind of drew you to that?
It was a combination of things. The GI Bill is really nice. My brother is actually a fourth generation airman. So he was in the Air Force. My dad was in the Air Force. My grandfather was in the Air Force, and my great grandfather was in the Army Air Corps because there was no Air Force. But he flew in B-52s during World War II. So I've always felt kind of drawn to military service. And of course, I joined the Army, which went over like a lead balloon with my folks, but they got over it. And I knew that paying for school was going to be a struggle. My parents really didn't start making much money until I was quite a bit older. And so, growing up, things were a little tight quite frequently. So I knew there wasn't going to be a ton saved up, and well, that's awkward. Oh.
Yep. So you were talking about how what kind of drew you towards the military, and also I want to talk about like kind of what was that experience kind of like as a kid coming out of high school? What did you expect, and then what kind of did it actually turn out to be?
It was a little bewildering. I kind of had some expectations. My dad, my brother, and my grandpa told me all about what going to basic training was like for them. So, I knew there was going to be some mind games involved, but obviously the Army and the Air Force are very different. And so, that was kind of interesting, just seeing the dynamic differences. Well, and one thing that was interesting too is, so my brother went through basic training before they integrated men and women into the same unit for basic training. I went through after, so I actually had women in my basic training, which was funny because in talking with my brother, he had a classmate who got caught talking to a woman when he was not supposed to even look at them. And his punishment ended up being he had to paint a section of wall that was about like 3 foot by probably 4 foot. But they gave him a Q-tip to do it with. So I kind of knew that it was going to be, an interesting experience. I frequently tell people that, basic training is the most fun I never want to have again. And the rest of my time in the military was a little bit like a wild fever dream. There's just crazy stuff happens. You meet crazy people, and it's a lot of situations that you wouldn't necessarily imagine yourself getting into. One of my drill sergeants was a Samoan guy, and so he was probably like 6'4", 300 pounds. Wow. Yeah, he was a mountain of a man. And there was one point where somebody passed out because they locked their knees, which they tell you like 1,000 times not to do.
Yeah.
But he did. So he passed out, and he was kind of a smaller guy, and it was while everybody else was still filling in, and I was in the very back of the platoon. So I run into this room, not realizing that this guy has passed out. And this is like the first day. And this gigantic man just grabbed him by the scruff of the neck with one hand, picked him up, and started shaking him like a rag doll, trying to get him to wake up. So all I would do is I run into this room, and all of a sudden I see this huge human shaking this other smaller human like a dog with a toy. And I was like, oh, I have made a mistake. But I learned a lot. It taught me a lot of discipline and, just grit overall. It pushed me in a lot of ways that I was not necessarily prepared for. I wasn't super competitive in sports in high school. And so there was a lot of that physical aspect as well. I actually lost 30 pounds while I was in basic training. But overall, I'd say it was a good experience. I met some of my best friends through the military that I'm still friends with to this day. I've met some of the people I never ever wanted to meet again through the military too, but that's life.
And I know you already said this, but where did you go to college at?
So University of Idaho up in Moscow.
Yeah. What did you study there?
That's a long question or a long answer. So initially I had wanted to be a veterinarian. So I was planning on pursuing a degree in biology. And then I was going to go to WSU for vet school. But 2019 was a really rough year. And I had a lot happen in my life that really kind of derailed things. And so right at the semester changeover, I had to go to biochem, which was a required class for biology and also for, going to vet school. And it was a 7:30 lecture. Yeah. And I remember I walked in and I sat down and the instructor put up a slide that had all of the biochemical pathways that we were going to have to memorize throughout the semester. And I looked at it and I went, no, I'm not doing this. And I got up and I went and I changed my major. So I changed to ag ed. Got through 90% of an ag ed degree. I ended up having a bit of beef with one of the general education instructors. She was very clearly of the impression that like education is everything, which I can understand to a degree. But at one point we were talking about like classical conditioning, like Pavlov type stuff. And she asked if you have to condition college students. I said, yes, because you have to condition all students. That's the whole point. Like you're trying to get them to exhibit a certain behavior. And she said, well, is that true? Because, college students want to be here. They want to be here to better themselves. People that don't want to better themselves do things like go to community college or trade school. And I about got up and walked out of the classroom right then because I was like, okay, clearly you and I have very different values. Did not do well in that class. But unfortunately that class was required for getting into the last year of an ag ed degree. And then there was some errors in my advising or miscommunications, whatever you want to call it. And then they told me, you're going to have to wait another year. And at that point, I basically was like, I am not waiting one whole year for one class. And I looked at my transcript and I had 183 credits. And I was like, no, I want to be done. Just give me the paper. As long as it has my name on it, I don't even care what it says. So I started scrolling through and I found a general studies degree would get me out the door immediately. So I was like, sold.
So ag study seems like a really kind of like broad thing from everything that I understand. And is it just a lot to kind of have to put together than when you're actually learning it? Or is it a little more easier, I guess?
Yes and no.
Okay.
The term I've heard it referred to as is an inch deep and a mile wide.
Okay.
Because you do cover a lot of stuff. But I think it's interesting because it's an applied science. And so as long as you look at it from a perspective of, chemistry and biology and a little bit of physics, it becomes a lot more cohesive. But it is varied enough that it keeps it interesting. That's part of why I chose to teach ag. Mackie was begging me to stay and be their math teacher before I left. And like as fun as teaching math could be, I think teaching ag is a lot more fun. Especially because I am teaching 6 different courses every day. And so I'm not having to stand up there and give the same lecture over and over and over again, which is, I think, nice.
What's one of the most defining moments of your life, would you say?
Of my life? Oh, boy. Well, that's a hard question. I think the day I got out of the Army, because, for so long, everything I was doing was a stepping stone. And in some regards, I'm still in that mode, but I think that was really the transition to when I realized things were going to be a little bit more permanent. Nothing in the military is permanent. And so having that transition and then also recognizing that, I really am an adult now, and the ability to get into college and, it was just a total frame shift for the rest of my life.
Yeah, and that's what I was gonna ask also, is because leaving it, from what I've heard, it's going from like a lot of structure and then suddenly you're kind of like a lot freer. Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you kind of experience that? I'm guessing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One phrase that I've heard that I really like, I miss the clowns, but I don't miss the circus.
What kind of led to you choosing teaching as a long-term career or transitioning from or going into that?
It was always something I had considered.
Mm-hmm.
I actually had a conversation with my high school ag teacher about it because I told her I was contemplating either education or vet school.
Mm-hmm.
And her advice to me was go to vet school because it'll be harder, but you can always fall back on education. And it's a lot harder to go the other way. Not very many people become teachers and then decide, I'm going to become a veterinarian now.
Yeah.
And it's something that's always come at least a little bit naturally to me. When I was in the secondary school for training for my job as a vet tech in the Army, I ended up leading most of our study sessions. Actually got an award for it, which I was not expecting because I didn't even know there was an award for that. But like then I got into college and I ended up doing the same thing with like some of my chemistry study groups. I also helped some people that I was in like a biology class with do some studying for that.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's always been kind of fulfilling. I really like, watching that light bulb turn on for people. And I think the world is a really interesting place, and science and ag is just our way of understanding it.
Mm-hmm.
It's funny because, I'll talk to kids about acetylene welding and I kind of try to talk to them about the chemistry of it.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes their eyes just glaze over and I'm like, okay, yeah, we're never getting anywhere. But
Mm-hmm.
realistically, it's freaking magic.
Yeah.
Chemists are wizards and I cannot be convinced otherwise.
What are kind of some hobbies you enjoy in your free time?
I know it may not look like it now, but I do like lifting weights, working out. I like to participate in the Scottish Highland Games. So if you've ever seen those people that look like they're trying to throw a telephone pole,
Yeah.
I'd like to do that. When I was living in Moscow, I was going to a strongman gym.
Oh.
So I've been to a handful of strongman competitions.
Mm-hmm.
I have some plans with a group of friends of mine who also do strongman and Highland game stuff. We're actually hoping to go to Scotland and lift some of the old lifting stones that they have there. We've got like a whole map planned out so we can hit a whole bunch of them.
That's cool.
And on the bucket list, I want to be in a Highland Games in Scotland someday. I think that would be so much fun. Outside of that, I do a decent amount of video games. I also like hiking and camping and, outdoorsy type stuff. I am not artistically inclined in the slightest, so I can't give you anything there, but if it's outside or picking up heavy stuff, I usually like it.
What kind of got you into that? Because I'm assuming pretty niche kind of thing.
Yeah.
Way.
Yeah. So my parents, my dad especially, really started getting into the whole ancestry thing. And he was actually able to locate specific counties that we had family members from in Scotland and Ireland. And then I happened to just be perusing on YouTube one day and I came across a video on like a demonstration for caber tossing, which is the throwing the telephone pole. And I was like, I remember thinking to myself, I was like, I can do that. I want to do that. So I signed up for a Highland Games that was in Nampa. And I had no idea how it worked. No idea what I was getting myself into. I borrowed a kilt from my dad because they are required.
Really?
Yep. And I just showed up. And thankfully, the group that runs the one in Nampa, they run a novice class, which not all the groups that run those do. But they use like slightly lighter weights, and they offer you instruction on how to proceed through all of the events, which was really cool because I kind of thought you could just show up and pick and choose which events you do. Yeah, no, if you show up, you got to do all the events.
Oh.
And there are 9 of them.
Oh, what are those?
So you have the caber toss,
Mm.
the sheaf toss, not to be confused with the sheep toss, but the sheaf toss, you're literally just taking a pitchfork, you stick it into a weighted burlap sack, and whoever gets it over the highest bar wins.
Huh. Oh, I've seen.
It's so much fun.
That's cool.
You have the heavy and lightweight for distance. The heavyweight is 56 pounds, and the lightweight is 28 pounds. And it's literally just a cannonball that has a chain on it and a handle. And basically the only rules are stay in the box and you're only allowed to use one hand. Do whatever you want. Which is how most of the rules in that are, honestly. There's the heavy and lightweight hammer, which is where the Olympic hammer comes from.
Oh.
But instead of being like a soft, flexible rope, it's a solid handle instead.
Throw that.
You throw that. They actually make hammer shoes for it, which are just like boots that have like a 6-inch blade that comes off the toe, so you could dig into the dirt so you can lean back farther. It's pretty cool. And then there's weight over bar. They're very original with their name schemes. Which is a 56-pound weight. Same deal. It's just a weight on a chain with a handle. You're allowed to use one arm. Whoever hits it over the highest bar wins. Some people spin. A lot of people use what they refer to as the trebuchet method, and so you like basically reach between your legs and use your back and legs to launch it. That one's a lot of fun, although it hurts my hamstrings every time. I think I've cleared 12.5 feet is as high as I've gotten with it, and of course the world record's like 20 feet or something. But I think it was set by like Hafthor Bjornsson, who's the guy that played like the mountain in Game of Thrones.
Yes.
And I think he just broke the world record for deadlift. Like, I think he did 1,000-kilogram deadlift. Yeah, he's a big freaking, he's already like 8 feet tall, so he's already halfway there. Like, besides that, so I said caber, sheaf, weight for distance, hammers, weight over bar, and stones. So there's a open stone and a Braemar stone, which is where the modern shot put comes from. But instead of being a round ball of steel, it is a rock. And the open stone is a smaller stone, and you're allowed to move around within the box. The Braemar stone is a heavier stone. It's usually 22 to 26 pounds, and you are not allowed any forward progression. And it just really itches that monkey part of my brain where you like walk out in the field and you're like, hey, I bet I can throw that rock further than you. But yeah, so that's where, a lot of our modern stuff comes from. It is the oldest strongman competition that we know of. Although the sheaf toss we did steal from the Basque, but it's fine. Don't tell them.
Okay. What sports did you play as a kid?
So like I said, things were kind of tight when I was a kid. So my brother and I had a fairly strict one extracurricular a year. So like I played basketball in 7th grade. I did football in 8th grade. And then I did track when I was a freshman. And then after that, it was just FFA, which is a sport in its own right when you're running across a pasture trying to chase a steer down. But, this is a little less structured.
So is that kind of pretty, I'm guessing that's what kind of inspired you to be an FFA advisor, is being in it?
Yeah.
At that time?
Yeah, absolutely. I actually got my American degree, which is the highest degree that you can get through FFA. I want to say it's less than 1% of active members end up achieving theirs, which was super cool. And so I got to go back to National Convention for that. Pretty sure it was the last year they were in Louisville, which I told to somebody when I was in college. She was a freshman, and it was like a couple of freshmen, and they were talking about going to National Convention and the fact that it's in Indianapolis. Yeah. And I was like, oh, I actually went when it was in Louisville. And she looked at me with the most disgusted look and went, oh, that means you're old. I was like, wow, I got my American degree in Louisville, thank you. And she goes, oh, that means you're really old. was like, how old do you think I am? Like at the time, I was like, I'm not even 30. Like, what?
Wow.
College girls, man, they're freaking mean.
So, and then kind of actually being an advisor now, how's that been?
It's a lot of fun.
Mm.
It's funny because like, you know, I was only in Mackey for the year and I've only been here for like 2 weeks at this point. But you really get to see like just how much personality these kids have. And you know, over the last year in Mackey, even just through the year, seeing how kids change and how they develop, is just a really interesting process. I'm always amazed and curious to see what kind of person kids turn out to be. And it's always funny too to hear when, you know, they're like a freshman and they're like, I'm going to be the president, and by the time they're a senior, they're like, maybe I can be a mayor.
What do you is that just kind of what you enjoy the most about it, would you say? Is just that kind of just seeing all the kids and kind of how their personalities develop? Is that what you're saying?
I mean, personality development and just like brain development, intellect development. I really, like I said, the world is a super interesting place. And so I like getting to share that with people. And I think, you know, especially today, there's a lot of kids lack curiosity. But I think if you are excited enough about what you're talking to them about, they kind of pick up on that and start to get, excuse me, they get excited about it in their own way. And, you know, it's really fun when a kid finds their niche and is able to just take it and run. One of the junior high kids, we're going to the Eastern Idaho State Fair tomorrow. So we've been prepping them for potato judging. And I was telling them all about the competition, and I was like, yeah, and I'm fairly sure this is a qualifier for state. So if you do well here, you know, you can go compete at the state level for potato judging. And they freaking lost they're like, we can go to state for this? I was like, yeah, dude, if you win, I'm definitely taking you to state. And so that was last week. And then on Monday this week, he came in and was like, I studied the PowerPoint for 3 hours this weekend. And I was like, dude, there were only 15 slides on that PowerPoint. What were you doing? And then I actually had another teacher stop me in the hall. She was like, yeah, this student told me all about potatoes, more than I ever wanted to know about potatoes. And I was like, well, he found his jam. Like,
there we go. What's kind of your vision for the FFA as well as the other shop programs?
Yeah, I really believe in what the FFA does. They talk a lot about what they refer to as the 3-circle model. And so it's just one big Venn diagram, but with 3 circles instead of 2. And so the 3 circles are classwork, FFA for leadership development, and what they call SAE, which stands for Supervised Agricultural Experience, which is basically where you're taking what you learned in the classroom and you're physically applying it to a project. And it doesn't necessarily have to be like taking an animal to the fair. You know, anymore, agriculture is such a broad term that really it can be almost anything. But it's just taking skills that you have already learned in a classroom environment and applying them in a real world setting. And I think that teaches kids a lot because, let's be real, learning something in a classroom and then actually being able to put it to practice are 2 entirely separate things. One of the, I guess, you know, I don't want to call him a founding father, but like one of the really influential figures for CTE as a whole was John Dewey, who wrote a lot of books in the early 20th century because they were facing a very similar crisis to what we're facing now, where people in the trades are rapidly aging and we're not filling the space that they're leaving behind. And so what we end up with is a lot of people with, you know, really advanced degrees, but not necessarily people that know how to fix things or build things. And so his whole thing was just discussing, you know, how do we take kids and integrate things into the classroom to make them more applicable to what we're actually doing in the real world. And I think there's a lot of value to that. I would also say that FFA leadership opportunities are phenomenal. I learned a lot from having to do some of that stuff, even if it's just making a kid get up and do the FFA creed and forcing them a little bit to face that, stage fright thing.
Yeah.
Just developing a little bit of public speaking can take you so far. And as for how I would like it to go, I mean, on my first walkthrough in here, I was looking at all the awards that the previous ag teacher had up on the wall. And I started noticing, a lot of these are from like the early 2000s. There's like a couple that are in the 20 teens, and that was about it. And I was like, it would be really nice to be able to get some kids in here and get them excited about going to some of these competitions and see if we can earn some award. And obviously it's not all about the awards, but like it is fun when you can point to it and say like, yeah, I did that. And even if you come back, 10, 15 years later, you can still point at it and say, I did that.
Yeah, of course.
And I think I would really like to get some more kids pursuing degrees. Just if nothing else for the scholarship opportunities. My American degree actually netted me a couple different scholarships that I was able to use in college. And that's just cash in the bank. Like who doesn't like that?
If you could start a business tomorrow, what would it be?
Oh, that's a good question. Well, my sister lives in Germany, and she often talks about how much she craves Mexican food because, it's just not something you can find very easily in Europe. So I don't know, maybe I could talk my dad into like moving over there, setting up a Mexican restaurant and like doing actual Mexican food. The thing is, my dad grew up in like Southern California and Texas. And he does most of the cooking in my parents' household, and so we had a lot of Mexican food growing up. And yeah, I think we could make a killing if we just did like homemade tortillas and refried beans. Like,
where have you kind of lived and worked over your entire life?
Okay, so I have lived in Idaho, obviously. I've also lived in California, Washington, Texas, Oklahoma, Wisconsin, and Iowa. So all over. Most of my military career was spent in Washington. I joined the Army. They put me on a Navy base. With the Army is the only branch that has veterinary services, and so anywhere that has military working dogs, obviously you need a veterinarian around, and so we get placed in all of those locations. Texas and Oklahoma were also both part of the military, and then I lived in California mostly as a little kid, but then like we moved to Wisconsin for my dad's work. We lived in Iowa for just a little bit, same thing for work. And then we ended up moving into Idaho and been here ever since.
Where's kind of like the favorite place you've ever been? Like just in general, not that like even you've visited, not that you've lived.
Sure. I don't know. I really like Moscow. The Palouse is so pretty. I'm popular today.
What's kind of like the favorite place you've ever been? Can be like visited or lived.
I love Moscow. It's a really nice, like, it's still kind of a small community, but they have more and better food options than any small town has any right to have. I still dream about some of the food that I got while I was up there. Plus the surrounding area is just really pretty. It's that mix of like forested areas with contour farming. And so, you just see combines driving like dang near perpendicular, driving across a hill. Although when I visited my sister in Germany, that was a very, very pretty area too. But so people-y.
What would you say is the hardest part about your job? So far, I guess.
So far, yeah. Sometimes getting kids to put in effort is like pulling teeth. And I can be as excited as I am, and make things as interesting as I can, but there are some kids who just aren't interested, and that's fine. Like, I get it. It's not for everybody. But it is hard because, you know, you do want to be like that teacher for everybody. Even if I know in the back of my head, like, it's not going to happen. I still probably try for it a little harder than I necessarily need to.
What's something you kind of want to learn but haven't yet?
I don't know. I always kind of wanted to learn how to play the piano. It seems like it'd be cool to know how to do.
Yeah. And then I have this. Tried this my last episode, and just have you pick 3 cards, and you'll give it to me, and then I'll just read them to you.
Okay.
Just 3 little kind of quick questions.
1, 2, 3.
Yeah. If you could have a giant stuffed animal, what would it be?
Oh, that's a good question. I've always been really tempted by those gigantic teddy bears that they have at Costco.
Yeah.
Have you seen those?
Oh, yeah.
The ones that are like 6 feet tall?
Mm-hmm.
Like, I think that would be so much fun to
have. If you could create a new cartoon character, what would it be?
Oh, no. See, this is where that lack of an artistic inclination starts to become a problem. A new cartoon character? That is a tough one. Can I make him Ag Teacher Man?
Sure. Good cartoon. Would you rather be able to draw or write really, really well?
You know, I feel like writing. Because I feel like writing is a little bit more ubiquitous. Like, you can do more with it.
Yeah.
Not that I'm not, like, a little bit jealous of people that can draw really well, but I don't know how that happened. My sister got all of the drawing. Clearly, I missed out on that gene.
And lastly, is there any question that you've been wanting to ask me, but then that I can actually answer?
What is your favorite color?
I think I would say probably red.
Red?
Red.
It's a good color.
Kind of basic, but I like it.
I dig it.
Yeah. Any last remarks?
Stay in school. Don't do drugs.
Perfect. Thank you for your time, and thanks to everybody for listening. Your support means everything. If you have any feedback, let me know, and I'll see you next time on Follow the Roads. Thank you.